A very good morning to all of you. Let me at the outset compliment the CII for organizing this annual conference on competition law and practice. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers on the panel and to Ms. Payaswini Upadhyay, our very erudite moderator for the session. This plenary session has set an agenda for three very important and topical issues that I will briefly touch upon sequentially. First, I will cover competition issues and disinvestments, and then I'll talk a little about stressed assets, sectoral regulations, and competition law. Though this is a medley of topics, they're all very important, as each of them can have a bearing on either competition in or competition for the market. Let me begin with competition issues and disinvestments. Governments have long been engaged in providing goods or services to their citizens that could also be provided by the private sector. The trend over the past few decades, however, has been to transfer these functions along with the underlying state-owned assets to private hands. The most common methods for this have been disinvestment of government shareholding or an outright sale or transfer of ownership of the relevant assets to one or more private parties. Broadly speaking, there are two reasons adduced for disinvestment. One is to provide fiscal support. The other is to improve the efficiency of the enterprise. The disinvestment process strives to inject market discipline in the decision-making of public sector units and also to create new practices of corporate governance while ensuring competition. It also seeks to restructure the country's portfolio of public capital assets. For the current financial year, 2022, as we all know, the government has set an ambitious disinvestment target of rupees 1.7 lakh crore. The key challenges to achieve this goal include entry barriers, scarce private participation, as well as institutional and operational modalities. Even after disinvestment, public sector enterprises may face a variety of issues, such as high cost and non-competitive industrial structure, operational inefficiency due to public obligations, larger share of government ownership, and an insufficient capital market discipline. Embedding competition principles in the disinvestment process can help in ensuring that there is optimal competition both before and after disinvestment. Towards this end, the core elements such as entry barriers, eligibility criteria and threshold limits, and bidding parameter, all of which may unnecessarily restrict the number of bidders, should be reviewed to make assets more attractive for maximum private participation. From the beginning, the competition agency can take notice and scrutinize the process of disinvestment from a competition lens. As part of our advocacy mandate, under Section 49 of the Competition Act 2002, competition assessment of some model concession agreements has been conducted. The instruments for asset monetization have also to be prudently structured and reviewed at the expression of interest stage. This needs to be done keeping in mind the sector and nature of assets. The modalities need to be mindful of creating a level playing field for potential bidders. This is no doubt a complex task. It involves balancing the interests of multiple stakeholders, and inevitably it involves numerous trade-offs. The point here is that the value of competition needs to be acknowledged and embedded in disinvestment policies as in the business conduct of enterprises. Let me now touch on stressed assets and competition law, the second issue that is being taken up by the panel. So the enactment of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code in 2016 is a path-breaking economic reform, and we all acknowledge that. Competition law, along with the IBC, is an integral part of improving corporate governance in the country. While the Competition Act does so by promoting competition, the IBC does it by reviving market players and hence competition through its resolution mechanism that includes mergers and amalgamation, among others. The question is there any interplay between these two instruments? The answer is yes. The legislature has not exempted combinations involving stressed assets from being assessed for appreciable adverse effect on competition, if any. Without a resolution procedure, welfare losses can be in the form of shareholder losses, elimination of jobs, and other public harms threatened by a shutdown. So a competition authority necessarily weighs these gains from a successful resolution procedure that happened through a combination against the losses that may result from the market power accorded to the acquirer. Thus, both these instruments, though different in their mandate, strive to achieve the same objective of obtaining economic efficiency and thereby contributing to the larger economic goals. Many of the bankruptcy cases before this commission pertain to crucial sectors of the economy, like steel, infrastructure, and cement. By their very nature, it is not easy for a firm to enter these crucial sectors, which require huge capital investment and other resources. Therefore, it is neither in the interest of the concerned business nor in the interest of the economy as a whole that such firms become stressed and die. Both the CCI and the IBBI, keeping this in mind, therefore work with the same approach, that revival is the best form of resolution. I will now touch briefly on the sectoral regulations and competition law. The CCI and sector regulators, we all share a common purpose. This is of fostering competition and fair play in markets and of protecting consumer interest. The primary role of a sector regulator is to promulgate and implement rules, regulations to be adhered to by the regulated enterprises. The sector regulator also performs ongoing supervision of the sector. However, this is not to say that regulated sectors are impervious to anti-competitive behavior of market participants. There are two factors to consider here. The first is that sector regulators' ability to bring about desired outcomes depends on how sensitive a regulated entity is to the financial incentives that the regulator can offer in the form of tariffs, transfers, penalties, etc. The second is the degree of competition introduced by the sector regulators in the design of the oligopolistic markets that they steer through their entry and other technical rules, such as access rules, tariffs, interconnections, etc. It crucially determines the competition concerns that emerge from the behavior of the firms and thereby the remit of competition law. The Indian experience has shown that regulation is only one part of the reform story. Successful regulation requires complementary reforms, including the introduction of competition and encouraging wider private participation that deepens markets. Like in many countries, legislative ambiguity, overlap, omissions, interpretational issues, differing approaches to competition regulation, and a lack of clear delineation of jurisdiction has resulted in some points of conflict in the emerging regulatory architecture between the sectoral and competition regulator. The essence of the interface between the competition authority and sector-specific regulators in India is captured in the Competition Act 2002 under sections 18, 21, 60, and 62. There are some proposals to replicate the statutory mechanism as provided under the competition law to deal with conduct that can be addressed by competition tools. This may create unintended consequences, including affecting the committee amongst various regulators in discharge of their respective mandate. Some overlapping jurisdiction between institutions cannot be eliminated, but it can be harmonized through improved lines of communication. The key is to ensure that there is consistency and continuity in the approach towards competition and regulation. This would provide a stable and predictable regulatory environment to the industry, as well as functioning markets to the consumers. I look forward to hearing the views of our distinguished panelists on these issues and their experience so far. I pass on the session's proceedings to Ms. Upadhyay. Thank you. Namaskar.